إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله فإن الله تعالى مع المتقين وبعد. We start by reminding ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who decrees that which befalls us in our lives. We start by reminding ourselves that whatever we face in this dunya has been sent to us to face by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran that we may be afflicted with something that we do not like, but it is better for us. And we may face something, or we may have something, or we may desire something that we like, but it is actually harmful for us, and it is not good for us. This is the attitude of the believer. No matter what circumstance he finds himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The early generations of Islam, they would aspire to be pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless what that decree is. And the scholars of the past, they discuss the fact that the highest station a person can reach when it comes to Iman of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to have full belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed the best for His slave, regardless what that situation is. Today, when we look at the world, we find that we have been blessed. When we look at these difficulties that we face, even though we are facing difficulties, in comparison to the difficulties that others are facing, they are light difficulties. We have individuals across the globe who, due to the lockdown that they may be placed into, cannot eat, cannot feed their families, cannot sustain their households. Whereas by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here we can eat, we can feed our families, we can feed ourselves. We have surplus to that which we actually need. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have to remind ourselves. Why? Because if we do not remind ourselves, then we can become ungrateful and we may start to complain. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes away the blessings from those who are ungrateful and replaces those blessings with difficulty and hardship. And that is the second point that I would like to touch. Lack of gratitude that we have previously shown. Are we ungrateful as a community of believers and a society that we live in? Have we been born into an ungrateful society? Do we take our privileges for granted? There are often today calls of the privileges of others, but what about our privileges? What about the privileges that we all have in our everyday lives that we take for granted? We have running water, we have food, we have comfort, we have clothing, we have heating in the winter, we have systems to cool us down in the summer, we have the fruits of the summer available to us in the winter, and we have the fruits of the winter available to us in the summer. We have various types of meats, we have fish, we have poultry, we have vegetables that the people of the past perhaps have never heard of before, but yet we complain. We complain about the lack of particular ingredients or spices, or the temperature of our food, or the lack of temperature of our food is in our time today. And when we compare our lives here today in the UK, situation-wise, his situation is far better than those that came before us, generally speaking. The kings of the past, if they were to see the way that we're living today, they would assume that we are also kings and queens because of the luxuries that we have, the luxuries that have become available to us. But yet we are ungrateful. We waste food, we waste drink, we do not think about others as much as we should. And so we have to question ourselves, and we have to blame ourselves, and we have to rectify ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tests the believers in order for the believers to look at themselves and realign themselves with the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us through His Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Are we adhering to that message? Are we facing up to the responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon us? Do we find that our masajid have been closed and our luxuries and our comforts have been taken away from us because of our lack of gratitude and our lack of facing up to the responsibility that we should be facing up to? And the third point that I would like to touch on in relation to the situation that we're facing today is the blessings of having our luxuries and our comforts taken away from us. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala wa radiya an, he used to prefer poverty over wealth. Why? Because poverty would remind him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the poor person who has belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that Ahmad was a person who lived a life of poverty. Not all of the scholars did so. Some had wealth. So there were various circumstances the scholars found themselves in. But Imam Ahmad was a person of poverty, and he preferred poverty because poverty reminded him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person does not have any provision and they have belief in Allah, when a person is worried or anxious and they don't see any way out of their circumstance, they naturally turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas the person in comfort becomes dependent upon those comforts. In our society today, we have become dependent on the systems that we rely upon. We rely upon our accountants and our bankers and our employers to place the money that we require into our banks weekly or monthly or fortnightly, etc. So being in this situation is a chance to remind ourselves and to ultimately turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fourthly, it is a time for rectification. We have been put into isolation due to the circumstances. Therefore, we should use that isolation in a way which will bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The early generations of Islam, those who knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would often seek time alone to spend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, when we are alone, we see it as lonely time. We want to be social, we want to be with others. The people of the past, they would turn away from people so that they could have time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. They would increase in their worship. They would increase in their recitation of the Quran, in their adhkar. They would increase in their means and modes and mediums of acquiring useful knowledge that they could implement. We are having basically a month off, you could say, to spend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should utilize that time. We should spend that time in a way that's going to benefit us and benefit our families and ultimately benefit society. When the masajid reopen, who do we want to be when we come back to our masajid? The person I am now, who do I want to be? The person who is close to Allah. If I could be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what would I look like? How will I get there? What can I put in place for the following month to take me there? If I am not reciting Quran, I need to recite the Quran. If I am not praying my nawafil, I need to pray my nawafil. If I am not praying qiyam and I don't have to physically go to work, then I can utilize that time to pray some qiyam. If I'm not fasting, my life right now might not be as strenuous as it usually is, so I can fast. If I need to help our family, spending time with our family members, using this time to get to know our family again, as we become busied with our lifestyles, our work, our social interactions, going to and forth from the places that we usually frequent. So now we are in a position where we can spend time with our families. We can sit down and reconnect with our family members. We can notice where we need to try to help our family members and provide that help and assistance. And we can get to know ourselves better. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the best of you are those who are best to their families. Why? Because it's very easy to be a good person in front of people that don't actually live with you and know you. But when you are at home, those people know you. Those people know you when you wake up. Those people know you when you go to sleep. Those people know you when you are using places that you would not like to discuss in front of others. Those people know you when you are eating. Those people know you when you are happy, when you are sad, and when you are angry. Your akhlaq, your character during those situations determines the true state of your level when it comes to your character and your ability to interact with others. So we can utilize this time now to get to know ourselves better. How do I treat my family members? How can I improve my character? What can I do to become a better person with my family? So this time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, it is a test, but there is benefit in it. And benefit often comes at a price. In order to receive something, when you purchase something, you have to put down a price. We have to pay a price for the benefit that we are going to make, and the price is sacrifice. If we want to utilize this time, we want to utilize this month, we need to sacrifice. We need to make sure that we have the right mindset. We need to go home, we need to be in our homes, we need to be in a mental state where we are ready to utilize the time, use the time, and work to better ourselves during this time. And this time is a time to reflect. For many, their jobs have been taken away from them. There are those that will be made redundant, those that have been put on to furlough, and sometimes that leaves a hole in the heart. Why? Because we become attached to that which we do outside, and that which we do outside of our homes becomes our purpose. If our purpose in life is to work, if our purpose in life is to make money, if our purpose in life is to acquire positions and status, if our purpose in life, for example, those that usually go to the gym or those that usually do some sort of activity outside becomes those areas, a person wants to become fit and good looking, that's his or her purpose in life. A person wants to become known through what he does, the content he creates, and he can't do that or she can't do that no longer, that's their purpose in life. It's a time to reflect on the purposes that we have in our hearts for our living. I live for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The means within which I attain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be what I use outside of my house, my job, my role, my position. That is our ummah, to utilize that which we have in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what can happen is the means becomes the ultimate goal. And therefore we lose track of the real ultimate goal, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we've been put into a position where we have to reflect, we have time to contemplate, we have time to analyze, why do I feel this way? What is it that's missing in my heart? A time to reconnect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to utilize this time in a way which is pleasing to Him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this time that we have and make it a time for reflection, a time for rectification, a time for gratitude, and a time for astute reconnection to Him. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.